One of the key elements of having independence as an internal audit function is that we have unlimited access to the people, the systems, the documentations, everything within the organization. And so whenever we have a scope limitation, whenever we ask for something and we don't get it, whenever we need to go somewhere and we're not allowed in, that's an issue. And so what we're going to look at here, what happens when there are scope limitations, when management doesn't allow us to do something, when we have restricted access. And we need to keep in mind that this is systems. That's a database that you can't also be what we would call a scope exclusion in terms of scope of geographies that we're able to look at. They may be in the course of an organization. And so when this happens, there is an impact on the audit. Testing that doesn't do everything that we want it to or everything that it could do. And so testing that doesn't do everything. And so what this leads to are conclusions that aren't as good. We may not be able to conclude on everything. We may be issuing our reports that say, except for the areas that we weren't able to. Another element of independence connected to this, when that scope starts getting limited, when we don't quite have all of the same access, and that's not going to be good. And also, if we have this happen, this is a problem. And most importantly for the organization, this doesn't help our risks. Risks are going to accrue organization, and that's a risk. And so when this happens, when we have this situation where somebody why did they say that there was a restriction? What's the justification that they gave for that? How does this impact this as well to the right people? And there's resolve it to do this. Then senior management. And then this actually ends up getting reported in our audit communications. These are the qualified results. If there are risks that we think are excessive or we're not able to assess, we need to go through the process of having management acknowledge this. And it is that has responsibility for these situations because it's not what it's supposed to be. Risk is there. We have levels of risk that we don't want to have, that we shouldn't have. And so there are some warning signs and some patterns that we don't like, functions to departments that have had problems in the past, that there's a problem, but it's certainly other areas, and it just little step by step, and it ends up being a very large things. And they say no, but there may be other ways not to go wrong. And again, we need to have clear communication. Kind of the last resort when all else fails, get the letter from, get the charter, something that's a problem. Something's not going to be done. Now that we've done the work and done our root cause analysis, we're going to spend a couple of minutes here talking about how it is that we determine which findings are most significant. We have all of this information, all of these things where something wasn't quite what it should have been, something was. We need to do. Standard 14.3 requires that we evaluate each potential finding to determine it at all because it isn't that big of a risk. It isn't that big of an issue. Not the only thing that we're going to build our puzzle. Also, how quickly is that risk event potentially going to happen and impact? So what might be a significant risk for one organization may not. Everything's going to be significant, perhaps. A lot more things are going to be considered to be significant. But if we're in an organization, also we need to understand what is the strategy of the organization. And that's going to help us is going to be more important. Things that impact the core business processes, the core business elements of the organization are going to be more important than those that are not impacting the core business. We work as an organization. Do we have absolutely critical? If we don't have much regulation outside the organization or a reputation, what's the impact of that? How can we trust us? Is there a strong tone at the top, and is more risks connected to that? What's the control environment? Is this the organization? And so it's not only the money. Obviously, that's a big part of it, what the financial guidance in this. Chief audit executive, the internal audit function should have some methodologies in place to help us go through this assessment. But there's still professional judgment. We're still involved in this, and we have our experience and our intuition and all of the work that we did. And this is part of everything else we do, where we document it. And so we need recommendations. This builds out our action plans. This builds out what exists. We're going to find those issues, qualitative factors, taking into account the organization as a whole, the strategy, which findings are most significant, most urgent issues, and then figuring out what's most important to us, what's most impactful for us. And so this kind of wraps up the process of understanding the standards, testing against the standards.
Okay, let's dive in. When you think about internal auditing, it's easy to picture a kind of standard playbook. But is it really that simple anymore?
Not at all. The landscape has shifted dramatically. What worked universally, say, 10 years ago, it just doesn't always cut it now. Businesses change, risks chaotic, and,
method has its pluses and minuses. Does that close collaboration ever raise eyebrows about independence? That seems like a core tenet we're tinkering with.
Agile really shines in fast-changing environments. Think emerging risks, new technologies, innovative business processes where the ground is constantly shifting.
Like auditing a digital transformation project.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
Maybe use the same sample transaction.
Toolkit. How does an auditor make the smart choice? It can't just be personal preference, right? What are the key things you need to assess?
No, definitely not preference. It has to be a conscious, reasoned decision based on the specific situation.